So let's get into the meat and potatoes of what the 1619 project is. So let's go to the, what is this? Quotes, key terms, questions. So, oh yeah, so it was released earlier to mark the 400th anniversary of when, oh, you were right, Jamestown. I just wanted to make sure. But because I remember hearing the podcast that it was Point Comfort, but I just wanted to make sure you were right. All right, so yeah. Reading guide. Questions to consider. Like, how did you first learn about slavery? What did you learn? How was it? Yeah, so this is the radical information.
Wait, do you want to answer these questions?
I feel like I couldn't. I don't remember the first time I heard what slavery is. I mean, this is like for kids. You know what I mean? Because I have no idea. But like I would say, but this is like the radical. This is the radical anti-American stuff that they're teaching. Like, when did you first learn about slavery? How was this information presented? What do you see as the lasting legacy? Oh no, there is no lasting legacy. That's
yeah, exactly. I mean, that's effectively what we're taught now. That's something you have to extrapolate on your own.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that's something that divides people along political parties. If you're growing up in a Republican household, slavery was just it meant nothing.
Yeah, or something that meant nothing. It's long in the past. It's 100 years. They've had 100 years to pick themselves up by their bootstraps and get to work. Yeah, what's the other one's gonna? Oh yeah, what do you know about the contributions of Black Americans to U.S. society? I mean, I honestly, off the top of my head, I'd say the biggest one is music.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say too, with the contributions to jazz and rock and roll.
Yeah, jazz, jazz, pretty much the modern pop music, which has, American music has basically just been exported to the rest of the world because
it's dominated the world.
Yeah, honestly, I mean, the legacy of slave, because they started singing things like the blues whenever they were working on plantations, and that's carried over into rock and roll, and that carried into pop music and hip hop, and that music is dominating the world. Yeah, slavery has a very, very lasting impact, a very large lasting impact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, who's on the forefront of the most popular genre of music right now, actually pushing the boundaries? It's Black people. It's J. Cole, Kendrick Lamar, even a group as simple as the Migos.
Yeah. Well, I mean, actually, those are all those people were more relevant a couple years ago, but yeah, it's just that I was honestly, because it's all the people that are doing anything interesting, I would argue the people that are doing anything interesting with music nowadays are Black people and other minorities, LGBTQ people,
Yeah. People that grew up in different environments, and we're getting to see basically what they have to say, what they have to express in an art form from that growing up in a different setting.
Okay. Oh, we had Pancake Monster asked, "Is there a target group for this? Depending on the state standards for teaching?" No, I think there are certain parts that are this is just a general overview. All right, this is for all grades. It'll have, if we go to some of the other ones on the site, it'll say what it's specific for. So oh yeah, legacy of slavery with mass incarceration. That's for more people that are older, middle school, high school, college. I'm trying to find one more. I guess they don't have one specifically for elementary. I guess all the ones that are all grades could that. But I guess these two here are a little more advanced topics. So you want to introduce them to a little bit of an older crowd. So yeah, pretty much any age.
It's not something that's really thoroughly flushed out yet.
Yeah, this is it's free too. You can just be a teacher. You can just print this out. You can just print the. Oh, see, there we go. See, oh, that's what I wanted earlier. I'm gonna get that up on a different tab. Can I download?
I wonder what the repercussions would be if you're just a teacher at a middle school or a teacher at a high school and just decide to start teaching this on your own. I mean, I know you have to send your curriculum into the school and the school board has to approve it or whatever. But I wonder if a teacher, a history teacher, just takes this curriculum, sends it off to the school board, and says, "I'm going to teach this." I wonder what the effect of that would be.
Yeah, see, I wanted to bookmark that because the New York Times, you have to pay to read the New York Times, or I have like my free trial's over. I wanted to read.
Oh, you
this.
just got it from Pull.
Yeah, I got it right. I pulled it right off of here. Yes, perfect. I'll read that at some point. That's what I wanted to, because like I mean I found the podcast on Spotify, which has like a lot of the material in it anyway. But big shout out to Pulitzer for letting me download that because I've wanted to read it.
I like that spooky picture of the Atlantic.
What's that?
It's just stupid, but that picture of the Atlantic on the cover of it, the transatlantic slave trade.
Oh yeah, because like the podcast,
very spooky vibes.
Exactly, because the podcast starts off just like that. Like whenever you started like the first episode, you just kind of hear like waves crashing against the shore somewhere.
Mm.
Yeah, because like I mean it's a little bit dramatic. Like I mean, I'm not usually a fan of like dramatic material like that, but like I mean it really hit home of like All right, so what's this one here? Index of terms and historical events. So I guess this is just affirmative action, Affordable Care Act, capital. Oh, that's probably a huge no-no why they don't like that, because I know they do frame slavery as like
critique of capitalism.
Mm-hmm. They frame it as a critique of capitalism. Because I don't know what else it would be. Like, I mean, I don't know what else they're gonna try to say it was. Civil rights.
There's probably a massive effect that the abolition of slavery had on the economy of the nation as a whole, not just the South. Because whenever slavery was abolished, you didn't have a workforce that just filled them in. There was a massive vacuum that they had to fill, and of course, a lot of that was done acutely. It was acutely filled by like indentured servitude and things like that. Black people that were accused of crimes that could, do their sentences by working, which was effectively just slavery.
Yeah. And then cotton farming, fiat currency, Declaration of Independence. I'm trying to see if there's anything that Jim Crow. Yeah, so I guess those are the big terms. Project essays, reading guide. So yeah, so I guess this is like the main thing. So that they would use. So I guess this is like where we really want to read a lot of this stuff. Oh wait, what is going on? Oh, it's meant to be like because this was a New York Times magazine. It's meant to be like a two-page thing.
Oh yeah, it's like split right down the middle.
Yeah, because I was like, what the hell is going on with that text? So I guess these are all the various authors of it.
I mean, the biggest like academic critique of this thing that I've seen is the Revolutionary War thing. That's the only thing that academically I've seen that's been criticized for this, and something that I could actually get behind. Like, yeah, maybe they got it a little bit wrong there.
Yeah, well, because I think
other than that, the only problem that any rational person would have with this is it doesn't fit their ideology that America has like an exceptional historic past.
Yeah. Was that? Oh, that's an ad. I don't want prostate cancer. So what's this on? Yeah, see, I'm so mad. I wish I would have got to read this before we started. Like, I'm very mad that I wish I honestly would have just like looked through this site for like more than 10 seconds. Like, because then I would have got this project.
The author, like you said, everything on like anything meaningful, I guess, that you would actually want to read is behind a paywall on New York Times. The author, that Nicole Hannah-Jones, she actually wrote essays like in response to some of these academic critiques, and I wanted to read those. Like, I had the link on my phone and everything, but it gave you like the first paragraph and then boom, please subscribe to New York Times Daily or whatever.
Yeah, it's disappointing, but anyway. Yeah, so like at least in the podcast, I mean, I just went through the episode. I remember what there is. So yeah, like I guess the big thing that like I could see like the problem that like a lot of the Republicans were have is like they argue that like so the founding fathers they set up the idea of like what America is, the all men are created equal, endowed by their creator, all that kind of stuff, and then they argue that like that those guys were hypocrites. They didn't actually live up. They aren't considered. They shouldn't be considered like following the American ideal. You know what I mean? And they argue that like the black people that have pushed for things like civil rights and things like Like, as I were talking earlier, they're the ones that have typically pushed for things like universal health care because like they're the ones most affected by it. Like those people are the ones that are like the true Americans that are fighting for like what it means to be an American, like that kind of stuff. And like they frame things like they talk about things like even though like Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves, he really didn't think much of them, and like they tend to gloss over this in history that like Abraham Lincoln, his original plan is he wanted to send them all back to Africa. Like he wasn't like they look at him, he didn't really because he brought a group of black leaders like free men in Washington D.C. He brought them to the White House and said like so here's my plan, I'm sending you all back to Africa because we can't because you harm us as much as we harm you, because you just being here and your culture and the way you people are will harm us just as much if we free you, so we're gonna send you like their plan was to send them back like originally. And I mean that's white supremacist. Like you can't that is like in line with any modern neo-Nazi talking point. Like and people like to kind of gloss over that and they highlight that, and I think that's important to highlight. Like it, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's an actual like white nationalist attribute. Like Abraham Lincoln openly advocating for a racially homogenous nation.
Yeah, and like and of course there like there were black people that did argue who's the one that wanted to go back to Africa? What was his name? I can't remember what his name
was.
Marcus Garvey, yeah. Because like there obviously people like him existed, we're not gonna but like overall, I mean most black people just wanted to stay where they are. They were born in America, like they consider themselves Americans, like they like what I mean. It's one of those things that like that they're attributing your culture to your race, and your culture is really just like the people you surround yourself with and where you are.
Yeah, culture is exclusively a construct of geography, where you were born.
Exactly, and
where you spend most of your time.
Yeah, and the people you I mean, I have more in common with the black guy that lives down the hall from me than I do with like a white guy in Alabama. Like, so I don't know why would you say that like white people have their culture or whatever? Like, no, like I share no culture similarities with like a lot of white people.
That's a good point you bring up too about having more in common with like a black dude or any other colored person near you. Like obviously you're in Iowa, a black person in Iowa is going to have more in common with you than a black person in Alabama. So not only is there is culture, it doesn't see race, but also America is made up of a bunch of different cultures. There is no distinct American culture.
Or I'd say there is a distinct American culture. There's no white culture. There's no black culture. There's no Asian. Like, you know what I mean? I mean, there are, like, little things. But, like, overall, like, we all kind of share the same. There's no... or, like, a lot of times black people have their own culture based on their experience of being black in America, But, like, nothing that's, like, it's, like, not born into their genes. It's because that, like, they're treated as second-class citizens a lot of times.
And just the entire point of them being relegated to these poorly represented communities, these poorly funded communities. There are white people in those communities too, and they are subject to the same culture that those black people are. Right? That's not those high crime rates that conservatives love to talk about that are unique to black areas. White people, if you account for them in those same areas, commit crimes at the same bloated level. Yeah, now, that could be because of things of over-policing and stuff like that, but it's a culture. They are products of where they live.
Yeah, it's almost like if you take people, like, their skin, you look at their skin color, and then you redline them into a certain spot, and then you also over-police that spot. It's almost like that you're going to, like, screw their entire demographic up. Oh, yeah. Look at that. Alternate timelines. Reevaluating U.S. history. Oh. Let's see.
And that's another critique. Like, Tom Cotton, I think he went on, like, Fox News or something. He went on Fox News or CNN or some big media outlet and said that slavery was, like, a necessary evil in the founding of America. Just that point right there is exactly what the 1619 Project is trying to get through. Like, America would not be what it is without slavery.
Yeah, because And yeah, because like all that wealth was built in them and stuff like that, and also to go with the culture too is that actually kind of like I really when I thought of it, I was listening to that podcast. One of the writers was talking about how a story she had whenever she was in elementary school. Okay, and you had to like where because in America everybody's from somewhere else unless you're a Native American. Everybody came here at some point. And
I'm whatever a German and Slovak, German, Croatian, whatever.
Yeah, so so this girl, she like whenever she was in school, like they had an assignment is you had to like write like a like a page about like she was in like I don't know middle school, had like about your homeland and then like draw a flag of like of your homeland and like and then she went to like a very white she lived in a very white area and like all these kids were like, oh, and they were talking about like, oh yeah, well what should I do, like my dad's from here but my mom's side's family's from here, like yeah, and she was just sitting there like, I have no idea where my family came from. Like I have no idea. Like, because they came over as slaves, like they were just so I have no idea where they came. I just know that they came from Africa. Like, so that's it. And then she chose to, or not chose, she said looking back, what she should have done is just said she's an American because, like, that's what she identifies as more than anything. But is that she just, like, she literally went to the globe and just, like, looked away from it and went like this and, like, picked a country and just said, like, that's where she was from. And I was like, that's terrible. Because, like, it's something you take for granted, just being white, that you could just go like, oh yeah, like me, I could say my last name is Scottish, like, and I know, and like you can Google like my last name and then like a plaid. There's like a plaid for like the clan of like my last name.
Yeah,
I can Google that.
Yeah,
like,
Scottish people got like seals and everything.
Yeah, I have a blanket of that plaid that like my great uncle got for me like years ago. I still have it. It's like in that plaid color. Like I could say like, oh yeah, that's kind of cool. They don't have that. They can't experience that, or just even around like I live in like in Des Moines here, like they have the Italian food festival and the the Mexican food festival and the German. They have like a beer fest. They have Oktoberfest like for German stuff, and like black people can't enjoy that. They don't know where like
there's no Nigerian food fest. There's no or at least no prevalent fest like that or festival.
Yeah, I'm sure there are. So if you go somewhere like to New York City or Chicago or something like that, I'm sure there's something like that in like in those neighborhood. Like I'm sure they have a neighborhood or a little district where they do that kind of stuff. But yeah, overall, but like no major stuff, I guess. And that's it's kind of sad when I was thinking like what I mean, because she was just sitting there like she had no idea like what
I don't know.
Yeah, like because it's something you just like little things you take for granted like that. Oh, look at that, mapping your community's connections to slavery. Oh boy, that's gonna rile up some people. Let's see. Write a news pitch about creative writing.
What's the 1619 project? So basically, the 1619 project, summed up real quick, is just they're looking at American history and looking at it through a lens that's more sensitive to racial injustice and slavery. So they're looking back and actually highlighting the fact that a lot of the reason America did so well early on is because it was built on the backs of slave labor. True. And that's something that a lot of schools are looking to push now to put more of an emphasis on that fact that a lot of the exploitation of black people, not only did it happen, it was more severe than we're taught right now, and the implications of it are more severe than we are taught. And it's been met with a lot of opposition from Republicans because they don't like the fact that it's messing with their historic past. They don't like the fact that it's painting a lot of these founding fathers as hypocrites. And they don't like the fact that we are once again putting race on the forefront and actually highlighting these injustices, because then they actually have to do something about it.
Exactly, and I was just about to get into it right here. This is for exploring the idea of like what it means to be in America, or the idea of America. So, the signing of the Declaration of Independence in 1776 is often presented as the foundational event of U.S. history. Referring to the Declaration, referring to that, what are the values stated In what ways can you see those values working in contemporary society? In what ways can you see them failing? Is what they would take an issue. And then, how has the interpretation of those values changed over time, and who is responsible for creating those changes? And that's what they go into. Talk a lot about is a lot of times is that black people were at the forefront of actually creating those values, or like actually enacting those values, because I think they talk just how it was set up, how the country was set up. It was, in theory, it was supposed to be, the all men are created equal and all that, but it really wasn't. But black people over time have been primarily the ones that pushed for that kind of stuff. Let's see.
I'm a righty, so what does that mean Trump did? What does that mean Trump did? I'm gonna take that as, how does Trump interpret that? Trump interpreted that the way you probably would expect Trump to interpret it. He's completely fine with calling himself the most friendly president of the black community in American history. He's done more for blacks than ever. So of course he doesn't like this fact that we're seeing this project being taught that's shining a terrible light on all these idealistic American figures, and that we're actually still suffering the consequences of that injustice felt in the black community through slave trade and discrimination. And especially right now, whenever he's taking such a strong conservative stance on the culture war with all the Confederate statues, and with all these killings of innocent black people at the hands of the police. This is something he does not, and all conservatives that take that stance on the culture war, they do not want this being taught, because once it's taught that racial injustice is something that's integral to America becoming a country, then more people will start to see that the ripple effect of that discrimination is still being felt to this day.
True. And so I'd have to go, read this whole thing to be able to actually answer these questions. But just stuff they're pointing out that I can see that how they look at things through a different light is they're not referring to plantations in the article. She refers to them as forced labor camps, for what they are really. You know what I mean? Not
they're worker camps. They're not they're not plantations with a side of slavery. They are slave labor.
Yeah.
Camps.
Exactly. See the things that I was talking earlier with Thomas Jefferson and Abraham Lincoln were very not innocent people, but what is not being taught that the founding fathers enslaved? I think everyone knows the most presidents enslaved. Yeah, everybody knows that. It's just that a lot of times it's glossed over. It's just they own slaves. It's pointing them out as that they really didn't found in theory they put the idea of America up, but they didn't actually practice the idea of America. That's kind of what they're getting at. And then also I think you probably didn't pop on earlier is that Abraham Lincoln was not very fond of black people. He didn't look at them as his equal. He thought that they were savage, had different culture and that kind of stuff, and he wanted to actually send them back to Africa and in his original plan. Because he thought, because he said that that white people are harmed by black people just as much as they're, which is kind of crazy when you think about it, to actually have to say that to somebody.
And just if you ignore that, and just to go back to what you were saying earlier, if you ignore the fact that Abraham Lincoln was actually a very rampant racist, we're taught that a lot of these. Well, we're not actively taught it. We just everybody knows that former U.S. presidents owned slaves, but that's taught as just a flaw on their character, not the vice that it actually is. This owning slaves
True.
is a character-breaking attribute.
Yeah. Oh, and then I think it's probably mentioned. I think I knew for a while that so it does make sense that there was it's true. So this is the kind of stuff they're trying to add, and then they always like to say Thomas Jefferson had an affair with his slave. In the terms of those kind of power dynamics, that was a rape. You know what I mean? They're she couldn't say no to him. That's rape. That's I don't know how else you can put that. If she would have said no, he probably would have whipped her to death. And that a lot of the founding fathers too, they tried to push the idea that the British were responsible for slavery, for bringing it there, as they were using it. I could just imagine some I don't know, some wealthy landowner in, I don't know, like Georgia or something, like tying a slave to a post and like taking stripping him naked, then whipping him raw, and then going like, see what I'm doing right now? The British did this, huh? You see this? This is all because of the British. Like, so it's deconstructing a lot of those ideas. It's honestly, this whole big thing is a lot of just critical thinking. It's just teaching kids a lot of critical thinking. Like when you look like, especially these up here. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, Pancake in here in chat brings up a good point about how we use a lot of fluffy language, and I think that fluffy language is kind of good to use, especially whenever you're talking about like first graders. Whenever you're teaching them about American history, you don't want to show them like 12 years a slave. That scene of a black woman getting savagely whipped against a post.
Yeah,
that's not something they're ready for. The way it's taught right now is you need more of an emphasis on slavery, but whenever they get to that high school age, you need to teach them like, hey, this actually breaks your character. This actually, Jefferson, Washington, all these guys that you idolize really aren't worth idolizing. These are people that thought other human beings were so savage that we actually have to, own them and use them for labor because that's all they're good for.
Yes. Oh, and Lux Champ. Yes, we are anti-Trump. We are very anti-Trump. So yeah.
But we're not anti-Trump to be anti-Trump. We're not like your average American liberals. The orange man bad. Obviously, the way Trump presents himself and what he's done to the office of the presidency is bad enough. But if you look at it through an actual critical leftist lens, you can actually see that what he's doing to America is actually going to be irreversible in the long run.
True. Yeah, and as I say, but honestly, the way that I think this should be framed is this is just doing a lot of critical thinking. It's presenting these things hey, these are facts. These are facts. The stuff they're talking about, and then talk about things as to what are the ramifications of slavery? And then what is national memory? How do we create it? How do we change it? How does showing that American history really started in 1619 instead of 1776? It's talking about that more. How does that change your values? That kind of stuff. Or and also just interpreting our values in the Declaration of Independence, and how have those changed over time, and who was actually responsible for changing them? That kind of. It's just doing a lot of critical thinking to find out